Ordinary Guy. John sat in the high-rise office building, twiddling his thumbs nervously and crossing and uncrossing his legs sporadically. His anxious state made it difficult for him to sit still. His life was borderline dependent upon the success of the interview he had arrived far too early for. A lucrative job with a well-known oil company would be a step in the right direction, something to help him gain some measure of control over his life. John was always deemed to be the ordinary guy, a low-level office worker, lacking any goals or achievable ambitions. John blended in with the crowd and never took the initiative to set himself apart. Gentle in his nature, he didn't handle assertive people or confrontations very well. Often cowering at the mere possibility of it, he frequently fell victim to his attempt to be thoughtful and polite, as everyone stampeded past him both literally and metaphorically. In situations like these, he was always left behind, alone. To date, he had nothing to show for himself, aside from being a doormat for everyone else. After spinning his wheels for years, he finally concluded that he wanted to level up his life. Well aware that his personality could only be described as dull, he started to buy copies of the latest and greatest self-help books appearing on the shelves, all of which made grandiose promises of success through a variety of paths. It only left John more confused, especially when his attempt to slowly become more outspoken and a self-proclaimed extrovert were brushed away by others. He often watched his co-worker Max with envy. He was successful, with his shiny BMW parked out in front of the office, and Max enjoyed an increasingly high salary. Max was attractive with a bright white smile and toned forearms that were visible even through his dress shirts. Most of all, Max was interesting. When he spoke, it was clear how well versed he was in a myriad of ways, whether it be travel, current events, sports, or art. It didn't matter. Max already knew about it and could speak about it with confidence. John was the type of man who only spoke when spoken to, who preferred to walk on the side of caution than ever take a leap of faith. As a result, people rarely remembered his name or face because nothing was lasting or impressive about him. Blindly agreeing with those he did speak with got to him nowhere, and so most days he usually felt the cold shoulder from everyone around him. Due to so many negative and meaningless interactions, John began to feel paranoia creeping into the back of his mind, slowly convincing himself that everyone was looking at him with judgment and disapproval. This made it even more difficult for him to complete his daily tasks, walk into a room full of people, or even make a phone call. At first, he wasn't sure which was worse, blatantly being ignored or silently banished. It seemed always the case that the ones who judged him the most from the corners of their eyes were stronger than him, the alpha male types like Max, with their overflow of charisma and magnetism. John couldn't understand why they even cared about his never-ending failures and missed social cues. Surely they had plenty to worry about themselves, including the successful women, who seemed hypnotised by their never-ending chatter. Interview. John's racing reflections became harshly interrupted by the interviewer, who called his name for the second time with growing annoyance. John scrambled to his feet and wiped his sweaty palms on his black slacks. They were wrinkled, because he didn't take the time to iron them prior to the meeting. The interviewer nudged his nose in the direction of the single seat in the room, facing the large desk. John quietly sat down, immediately feeling how tense his shoulders and neck muscles were. He couldn't stop his foot bouncing up and down due to nervousness, and only hoped the interviewer would ignore this and press on with the questions. John could feel that his eyes were involuntarily widened, and so he attempted to blink away this fear, but it only made his glazed stare more noticeable. The interviewer was not impressed with John's entrance and grew even more agitated by his poorly phrased answers to the list of interview questions. The interviewer stared down the bridge of his nose, while John stammered on, spouting purely irrelevant answers, finally rolling his eyes when John's babbling ended. The interviewer explained condescendingly to him that the entire point of a job interview was to sell yourself to the company. The interviewee is supposed to market themselves to the company's needs. With his cheeks burning hot, John, of course, knew this to be quite true. The interviewer then handed John a pen and instructed him to produce a sales pitch for it. John attempted to extol the virtues of the pen by highlighting its appearance and functionality, but his efforts fell flat, and the interviewer only glared at him, expressionless. Then John was curtly shown the door. John's shoulders sagged with shameful disappointment. Outside the office, he was met with a tall man towering over him, who had a broad stance and a grin dripping with pity. "Better luck next time, bud." He patted John's shoulder, making him feel small. John never felt as useless as he did at that moment. If he had a fraction of the personality or tenacity of the other men around him, perhaps he could have charmed his way into the job. But for now, he was quite the fool for even attempting to change the trajectory of his life. He would always be the one blending into the crowd with very little to offer. Riding the lift down to the first floor, envy struck him again, reminding him that most people can overlook a city skyline and see a world of endless possibilities. But for John, any sense of optimism was non-existent. Once outside on the street, the disapproving looks returned, seeming to target him mercilessly. Even the street sweeper had a superior posture towards him, looking at him with sympathy, or maybe just pity.